That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Emancipation, the 15th film directed by Antoine Fuqua, which Apple TV is releasing December 2nd, 2022.
Can you name some Antoine Fuqua films you really liked?
I think by far his best is Training Day with Denzelly.
And Ethan Hawke, I know that.
Yes, and I also like Brooklyn's Finest with Wesley Snipes and Richard Gere back in 2009. And I haven't liked a whole lot of his stuff since then. He's been doing a lot of remakes, like he did The Magnificent Seven, he did The Guilty last year with Jake Gyllenhaal, and he did that film with Mark Wahlberg, Infinite, that I couldn't stand. Olympus Has Fallen. You've seen quite a few of his films.
Yes. Well, this one's going to be difficult because I feel like there will be a batch of people who feel like this is trauma porn and are not here for it.
Sure.
And then there are people who will find this sort of story cathartic. I'm probably more part of the trauma porn group, and we can explain why at the end, or after I explain the story. But the basic story, Will Smith plays a slave in 1863 who is on a plantation. He gets sold to go work building like a railroad station or railway track. And it's during his time there, he hears about Lincoln freeing the slaves. But he's already a fighter. So he was already thinking, how can I get out of here? And then hearing that Lincoln has freed the slaves, he has enough ammunition to act. So he gets an opportunity to take down some of the, I guess we can call them like slave masters. He does, and then the entire cohort of slaves at this location run off. But the main slave master is played by Ben Foster.
Because who do you call on when you want a method actor white man to play a racist? I guess Ben Foster.
So he, along with another white guy and then a black man who's sort of working for them, they go off and try to find Will Smith's character plus two other gentlemen who escaped with him. And we know early on that Will thinks that he needs, and I'm calling him Will because his name is not really established till the end, right? That he needs to get to Baton Rouge. So they're in Louisiana somewhere, and that we're told that Baton Rouge is like a 5 days walk.
And Lincoln's army's already there.
And Lincoln, is there to help assist freeing the slaves. So if he can just get there, he'll be fine. And then, of course, his objective is to get back to the plantation where his wife and children are. So the bulk of this film, like 100 minutes worth, are him getting through these Louisiana swamps, and it's brutal. And we can talk about all the things, but he does make it to Baton Rouge, and right as he's about, like, he can see the battle happening, like he knows that he's so close, Ben Foster shows up and almost gets the upper hand until some black soldiers who are part of the Louisiana Native Guard shoot and kill Ben Foster. So now the last act of the film is Will's character joining the army because he's given no other choice. It's either like
hard labor on a farm,
or join the
army and get revenge.
And and most likely be killed because you will be the first.
You will be on the front line. Yeah.
So he chooses to fight, and he's successful in taking over one. Like we focus on one particular battle. Then we see his like regiment go to like a plantation, which happens to be a plantation he had run past and was, we can get to it, but ultimately he ends up at a little village where he last knew his family was, and he reunites with them. The end. Oh.
And then you didn't even get to the most important part, is he was the subject of this picture.
Well, so the inspiration for this story is there's a famous image, which I can flash. It's upsetting. It's of someone who was referred to as Whipped Peter. And it's this black slave whose back is, covered in keloided scars. And this was used as an image by the abolitionist movement to show, particularly people in the North, like, this is what slavery looks like. And this is why we need to fight. So that is a very important part of the story. Although I guess I can start with why I think it's trauma porn, because I think the better story would have been to focus on how Americans reacted to this image.
To this picture, yeah.
Because I was reading about, because I'm familiar with the image, but I didn't quite understand where it was shown. But I believe it was like in Harper's Weekly, which was like a very popular publication at the time. I wish you would have spent time understanding how people reacted to that.
I think, a series of vignettes about what kind of influence, and he would be one of them.
And I know, I haven't seen Glory, but I know that there's already a movie about these black soldiers who had to fight for their own damn freedom. But that was the most emotional part to me, is seeing these black men fighting, like not really being properly trained, just being thrown out there, like you fight for your own freedom. To me, that was the more compelling story.
Sure.
But go ahead.
Glory is through also notably a white man's lens. Like that Matthew Broderick is the main character. Denzel won Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, so I should watch it. But I don't know why it was so important to just show the extreme brutality this man faced, which really, they're filling in the blanks. Because as far as I understand about this, the real person, who I believe's real name was Gordon, a lot of those details we don't know. We know that he was on a plantation. We know that he worked with onions, which is a plot point, and how he masked his scent from the dogs, and that he did join the Louisiana Native Guard and fought for freedom. But all the other stuff that we're about to mention is just stuff that was filled in by the screenwriter, and I feel like I don't know.
I think that's the major problem with this film is the script by Bill Collage, who's a white man.
I just wanted to focus more on like these black men who had to fight for their own freedom and what this image meant to the country, and then the joy of emancipation. We don't get any of that.
We don't get any of that, and also because the Will Smith character eclipses everything else. There's no time for characterization for anyone else, not even Ben Foster.
Including Will Smith. I think they make Will Smith seem almost like this creature, like this animal who just is like focused on one thing. And I don't know. I even wrote down at one point that like it's like they're making him like a super slave, which made me uncomfortable. And I think a big part of it is Will Smith playing this role.
Sure.
Because even the posters all around LA, because by our house there are two big posters that one of them is just the movie title, and on the other side of the street is just Will Smith's face on a white background. And I think his profile with that face he makes when he's trying to be serious and the chin hair, if you didn't know it was about a man escaping slavery, it almost makes you giggle.
Sure.
And there are many moments in the film where it's like he's acting so hard that I think it takes away from...
Well, also, I think a big problem is the Haitian accent.
And then I would love to know what Haitians think about his accent, because I think you agree. When he first starts talking...
I thought it was German.
I thought he was German.
That accent work was shoddy.
Especially compared to his wife, who's played by...
Charmaine Bingwa of The Good Fight.
She was okay.
She didn't have much to do.
She didn't have much to do, but it's like they don't really sound like they're from the same place. And then there's another gentleman who's part of the three who escaped together, who has an accent. Not sure where he's supposed to be from, but his accent work felt much better.
Yes.
So I think in comparison,
it kind of settles down much like his, I think it's a Nigerian accent, or supposed to be in Concussion. You settle into it, but it's still a bit distracting. It does go in and out.
I think since I'm accused... Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to say, too, not to walk his name into the room, but Chris Rock in the movie Top 5, that is a joke in that movie about he is he's starring in this movie
elevate his career.
He's starring in this movie about the Haitian Revolution. But
doesn't he do that because he's trying to get critical acclaim?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's a very relevant point, because it's kind of ironic that Chris Rock made a joke about this, and now here's...
Years ago, yeah.
Here's Will Smith. But I think because I'm accusing this of being trauma porn, I wrote down like some of the more brutal scenes, the acts of violence, and the visuals we see that I think really just felt... This may have been... this was reality for many people, but I think when you put it all on one person, it just feels like... I don't want to use the word overkill because it's a very serious scenario that we're talking about, but...
Like Precious.
Kind of like everything that could go wrong.
Everything.
Just every scene is like, Jesus Christ. But, so just some examples are like when Will's character is sold to Ben Foster and then taken to the railway. As they're entering the work area, we see these like poles, like these wooden poles with the heads of black men stuck on them. Like as a warning, probably, I'm assuming to not. Then one man attempts to escape. They brutally beat... I'm not even writing down all the times that these men are beaten and hit, but that's just a given. But one man attempts to escape, he's brought back, and then there's a scene where he's branded in the face. That was hard to watch.
Yeah, there's a lot that's hard to watch.
Then the moment when Will decides to escape, he's placing a body in like this multi-body grave. That was really hard to watch. Then we see one of the men who escapes. He's like shot dead in the swamp water, and then we see alligators eat him. Then
after the dogs attack him.
And then that was my next one. We see dogs maul this man. Then I think the scene that just took me like I wasn't on board up to this point, and then when this happened, it just I couldn't recover. Was while Will is running from Ben Foster, he's like hiding in the swamp, and we see an alligator in the water. The alligator attacks him.
Yeah.
And Will beats this alligator and kills it.
And then that alligator comes back because the trackers, they're tracking his blood, he's wounded. They find this dead alligator and they make a big to-do about
cutting it open to see if it has body parts
now,
in it.
if you don't see any of this man's remains around there, and there's not, it's so extra.
Then some of the wounds, Will has to cauterize them by heating up a knife.
He gets some honey.
Yep. Then Ben Foster's character like decapitates a man. Like we see him stabbing the neck and then pulling the head off.
Yeah.
We see, my God, just more trauma. Like Will's wife has been sold off and they're not taking the kids. So she's going to be, so now her husband's been taken away from her and now she's going to be ripped away from her family. So she decides that the only way to stay is to injure herself.
Like irreparably.
Like, so she sticks her hand in like the cotton gin. That was hard to watch.
Yeah.
We see a horse on fire at one point because Will comes upon this mansion that's on fire. Because now a lot of it's not explained. I feel like we're assuming that a lot of the slaves are revolting because they know they're free. So we come upon a mansion where the slaves have clearly attacked the owners. And then we see these horses running. One of them is on fire. Then some of the positives are I like the way the movie was shot, which you can get into, and then there's a final battle scene, like the one battle that there is where Will sort of takes charge. I thought that was very well done, but it's hard to watch because we see these men going into battle clearly afraid, and that was very hard to watch and very emotional. And we see them getting plucked off, like just shot right in the face. So those are all the examples of just how extreme it is, and I don't know that the story
Is strong enough to support it.
It's not strong enough to honor the image they're using as the basis for this movie.
Sure.
In my opinion. But I'm sure people won't agree.
Again, it's like with the Holocaust, never forget. And I do think it's important that we keep this memory alive, especially for kids that have no idea of what that was like. But there is a way to do it.
We saw this film at the premiere in LA. So Will Smith was there with his family and Ben Foster and the actor who played his wife.
Yeah.
They were there, and then Antoine Fuqua was on like Zoom to talk.
Because he's in Italy doing Equalizer 3.
And Will talking about this movie was so crunchy. He didn't even talk about the story as much as he kept thanking Apple for how great they were to work with. I just thought that was a really poor introduction.
I think he's doing damage control though still, because I think they were going to hold off on releasing this even this year because of the infamous slap. But
then it was like 4 a.m. in Italy where Antoine Fuqua was, and he's talking about like this movie's about love and faith. And I wanted to talk about that because I feel like that's a really flimsy. This movie is about trauma and brutality. And then the only love I saw was this man is taken away from his family, so he wants to get back to them. But he never really talks about that. He talks about his faith. But his faith is used in such a basic way.
Very broad.
Like very broad. To the point where there is another character who says, like, your God has us in this cage right now. Like, where is... And Will's character's response is something that's very, like, obtuse. And I just thought, like, I don't know, like, if you want to focus on this man's faith and how it brought him through, I didn't think that was well developed. And then it's not until the very end, he sees his wife, which I thought was funny because he goes to the village and he's screaming her name to, like, a bunch of people. And no one knows her. But this village is not that big. And, like... And wouldn't they have recognized him too?
Yes.
I thought that was so weird.
You would assume that. Yeah, there are a lot of weird
sorry,
inconsistencies.
go ahead.
And so, and also with how he he doesn't know how to choose his battles, kind of.
That was another frustrating thing about this character, and which lends itself to why I feel like they almost make him seem like an animal because he can't choose his battles. He's always fighting when it's not necessary, which puts him in... But then he gets put in situations where we see other characters get shot and killed or beat up for less.
He's saved a few times.
And he saved two or three times by Ben Foster's character, which I didn't understand. It's not explained why Ben Foster took a liking to him.
Oh, and then Ben Foster has this monologue about how he came to understand racism.
That was really... Actually, I should have added that to my brutality drama list, because he tells a story about when he was younger, he had a black maid who took care of him like a mother figure.
And she was his friend.
And he loved her. And he asked his dad one day, why can't she eat with us? And the dad goes on this diatribe about, like, these blacks, like if you, and he didn't use the word blacks, if you let them eat with you and they start thinking they're equal, then they want to take over. And then if they take over, like, what are they going to do to us? And then Ben, as a kid, says, well, I've been sneaking her food when she's hungry. And the dad, right in front of him at the dinner table, shoots the maid. And then, if that's not bad enough, then he describes how he threw her out in the field and it took her 3 days to die.
And her last word was why.
It's just like, oh my God. Again, these things did happen to people.
Yes.
But to pile all this on in one
There's
movie...
no subtlety. It's very like white fears in public places. But there's no finesse, I think. And I think a lot of it is with the screenplay, because it's when... I think when Smith is kind of just on his own and it's kind of a chase film, it looks... First of all, this was shot by three-time Oscar winner Robert Richardson, and it looks fantastic.
Agreed.
It has a battle scene that rivals Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory, Larissa Shepitko's The Ascent. It's beautiful, and how he plays with color as in the frame a little, because it's mostly in black and white, but as the hint of freedom comes, you see the hint.
The greens and the blues and the red,
So that's really the star of this film.
I agree.
But anytime anybody's interacting with him, the dialogue is so bad. And again, Bill Collage, who wrote Assassin's Creed, Allegiant, and Exodus: Gods and Kings. I don't think he was
qualified.
I think somebody else needed to... I get how Fuqua and Smith thought the heart of the script was good, but somebody needed to clean that up a bit.
Well, the other thing I wanted to mention is, because what I really wanted was the focus on the reaction to the photography and these black men fighting for their own freedom. But then the one scene where, because we do see the photograph being taken. And so his character, who's now called Peter, he gives his name as Peter. Peter, a couple of like the military people are like, hey, aren't you from that one place, the railway? So as the audience, we were thinking like, oh no, maybe these white guys... Like maybe they're related to Ben Foster and they want to get back at Will. So there is some tension. And then finally when Peter is in line to get his uniform, these two white guys along with the black nurse who had been helping him come up and say, we want to see you. We heard about you. So it was effective, and like I was scared for him. But then we find out those two white guys are photographers, and basically they tell him that we heard about your condition, and they make him take off his shirt. And it's the first time as the audience we see him without a shirt on, and we see his back and all of the scars. And they say, we're going to make sure everyone in the world knows what slavery looks like, which is a very powerful moment. And then that's it. I feel like that should have been the beginning of the movie. Like, sure. We see this man escape slavery, join the military, and then we see how his pain led to so many people's joy and how they fought for that. I don't know.
Well, and he's forced to join, and there's so many like elements of having to live through the survivor's guilt. Like he has to sit there while that man's decapitated. Like, there's so many things that we just have to gloss over, because
I think that's where the elegance and the finesse is missing, because like, yes, my list of trauma stuff does invoke a reaction, but it's like, I feel like it cheapens it when I could have really felt the pain and frustration of these people, but then you slide me into some joy. And I think in this movie, it's just like, oh, at the very end, we see the people of his village being told they're free. And of course, there's jubilance, but it's like...
But also, there's no infrastructure for these people, and that's why racism technically continued, because whites used any other way to enslave them.
The system was built around slavery, and nothing was ended except the actual act of... So, yeah, I agree. There's so many things that could have really added to this story based around this one photograph, and instead we just go for all the gruesome stuff. That's all I have. I'm sure the comments are going to be like, ugh, but
I prefer Nate Parker's The Birth of a Nation about Nat Turner. I think that movie got sidelined significantly, by unnecessarily so. But
You know, when
for films by black filmmakers without being dependent upon any kind of white savior, I think that does a better job of this than Emancipation.
my final thought is when you said we were watching it, I assumed that I would think that this movie would feel long and arduous, and that I would question why we needed Will Smith in this role, and that's how I feel after watching.
After 132 minutes and started very late, yeah.
Oh, can we talk about the premiere?
So there was a headline that Will Smith had COVID.
So we were waiting. We were in that chair for the film started 45 minutes late, but while we were waiting, eating free popcorn and drinking Jaden Smith box water, you showed on your phone that there was an article saying that Will Smith was talking to us via Zoom because he had COVID
from the day before.
But then he walks in and talks. But I thought it was funny. The dress code at this thing was so interesting.
Ooh, I mean, there was a lot of black excellence there.
There was.
Yeah.
Oh, and I want to talk about, I know her character's name, but her actual name is Deborah Joy Winans. She plays Charity on Greenleaf.
Yeah, she looked
She was
fantastic.
sitting in front of us. She looked amazing.
Yeah. You kept commenting on her
I didn't care for her fragrance. Well, you know.
I thought, yeah, she looked...
It smelled a little old maiden type, but
Oh, boy.
she looked amazing.
Yeah,
there were a lot of stars in the house, but it was funny because, like, only in LA do you get that combination of, like, people looking like $1 million and then me in, like, jeans and a t-shirt.
Yes, well, like all the press area.
I mean, the face is still sitting, but, like, you know, I wasn't wearing a suit. But anyway, that's all I have. What would you give this movie?
2.5.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5. I'm very in the middle, and I know people are going to be so divided.
I learned today, I didn't know this, Antoine Fuqua was married to Layla Rashawn.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that. For a long time.
Oh, shout out to Waiting to Exhale. R.I.P.
Why
Whitney.
do fools fall
And
down?
we're going to see Angela Bassett on Sunday in person.
Yeah?
Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.